I think we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for coming. My name is Amanda Williams, and I teach in Lawrence, Kansas at Free State High School.
And I'm Karen Gibson. I teach French 1 through 4, also at Free State in Kansas.
So we are really excited to be here, and so I hope that during our session today that you can take some ideas to get you started. You can access this presentation through this tiny URL. That's CIIA 19 3 strategies. So,
and it'll be posted later once you get everything uploaded, of course.
Absolutely. So just here's our agenda. We're going to dive in pretty quick so that we can get into the meat of the presentation. So we'll do just another quick introduction, and then we'll dive into 3 strategies that have been super helpful and useful for us to start our journey into using more comprehensible input in our classroom. So we are going to use, instead of like a Post-it note, if you ever have questions about anything, you are welcome to join this Yo Teach room, and Karen will be moderating the Yo Teach room and answering questions, and then when she's talking, I'll be doing that for her. So please feel free to join. You can scan the QR code, or you can type in Yo Teach. And
if you just Google Yo Teach and then put in CIIA3, it should pop up.
Yeah.
I forget the old chat room that did this, because they're not in use anymore, but
yeah. So yeah, feel free to jot your questions down in there, and like I said, we'll Lawrence, Kansas. I'm actually getting ready to start my 17th year of teaching. I mostly taught with traditional methods, grammar-based instruction.
And I'm Karen Gibson. This is my 12th year teaching. I used to teach at a junior high, French and German. And then I switched up to Free State, the high school level, 8 years ago, something like that. And I was always really, really intent on doing grammar. I thought you would not be able to be understood, you wouldn't be able to speak or write unless you understood grammar. And this beautiful woman told me, no, you're wrong, and got me to start peeling back my fingers on my grip on grammar. And so I've started to let go of that, and I've really, really enjoyed using more CI, CPRS type methods in class.
So you guys are already here, so we'd like to think that you're probably already drinking some of the Kool-Aid about comprehensible input and what it can do for your instruction. But just a couple things that we wanted to reinforce is that comprehensible input in and of itself is not a method. Okay, it is simply a way that we can deliver language. Okay, and so particularly if you ever come in contact with people that are like, oh no, that I'm not going to do that. I'm not into the CI. Well, honestly, since it's not a method, you could be really teaching anyway and delivering comprehensible input. You create comprehensible input with these 4 basic things. First, you shelter new vocabulary, and that just means that you're going to limit the number of words that you expose your students to at any given time. So, new words, I should say. The other thing is that you're going to use high-frequency structures. I don't know if you caught the Super 7 verbs in the Sweet 16 presentation earlier. That was awesome. That was a packed room. That is one of the ways that we deliver comprehensible input, by using these high-frequency structures. We use cognates and proper nouns. For example, if you don't want to introduce the word store, you can use a proper noun. I go to Target, or I go to Walmart, or I go to Dillon's, or whatever. That will help you communicate the same thought without having to overload them with too much new vocabulary. Your instruction language by establishing meaning and being repetitive and only focusing on getting plus one. So that input plus that one little level above, so you're constantly pushing the ceiling on that. Since there are a lot of ways that you can deliver input, there's a really great infographic from Elizabeth of this awesome conference, and it shows all the different things that you can do in your class input. We're going to focus on movie talk, reading with your students, and doing a little bit of PQA.
One of the things I really like about this graphic, the umbrella here, is that it really lets you be you in your classroom. I don't teach the same way Amanda does, and she doesn't always teach like me. We definitely have some things in common, but it really lets us bring our own personality to the classroom, and it lets us do what we enjoy doing with the kids. Even though we're both doing CI, it looks very different from classroom to classroom to classroom, so you really have a lot of freedom. I usually say with the method, even though it's established that it's not really a method, that's just like the easiest vocab word that I use for it.
Yeah. The other thing too is that we all go into our work environments and we have different requirements placed on us. I'm one of 4 Spanish teachers at my school, and we follow a textbook curriculum. And I had to find a way to follow my textbook curriculum, but also honor what I believe is best practice for my students. And so,
She has to play nice with the colleagues.
I do. So, and there are things that are obstacles for you that are not obstacles for others. Like, for example, I don't have to give common assessments, so that's a little bit of freedom for me, but that's not everybody. Some of you are going to work in places where you have to give common assessments, and hopefully these 3 things will help you no matter what kind of classroom and curriculum you are working with at the moment. You can start to use. All right. So enough of that. All right. So movie talk was developed by Dr. Ashley Hastings. It was spotlighted by Michelle Whaley, and it's super easy. It's one of the first things that I ever tried when I was diving into CI. So here's the gist of how to do a movie talk. You're going to choose a short film or a music video or a commercial. You're going to press play to start the video. You'll pause the video and describe what's on the screen, and then you're going to rinse and repeat the process over.
I really like doing it live because there might be one thing that I want to talk about, and it's on the screen for a split second, and you have to time it just right, and if you don't, you miss it, you have to back up, and I hate doing that. So I'll watch the video on my screen, PowerPoint, Google Slide, and then I have all in a row. We can talk about it via pictures, and then I go back and show the video. Okay, yeah. So just a couple of different ways to do it, just whatever you're comfortable with.
Yeah, definitely. I too, because play, and so that quiets my anxiety about making sure I'm doing all the things that I want to do with my movie talk. So this is a great video that was brought to my attention by the awesome Martina Becks, and she actually includes this in her first unit, which is free and available for you on Teachers Pay Teachers. It's called Dice. And that is one of the phrases that is targeted in this movie talk. And she actually has compiled quite a few resources that will help you use this as a movie talk in your classroom. So, like I said, it's a great first one. So, I target dice as the phrase in this, and so go ahead and hit play, and we can kind of see and think about if there's any other phrases that you might be able to incorporate.
Are we watching the whole thing or pausing?
It's not very long. It's less than a minute. So, yeah. So if you go back and think about those high-frequency structures that you can use with this video, like I said, I target dice, but ve, is, sorry. Any others that you think might? Yeah, come. Yes.
Or thinks that.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can take this wherever. I mean, you can, like I with my kids in the first week of school. This is their very first one. So, learn to do when you're doing it the first time with your students to really go ahead and use lots of rich vocabulary. Don't worry about them being able to keep all of that in their heads. Okay, they will eventually, but that's not the point. The point is that you're just trying to get in reps of these target vocabulary. So let's restart this, and I'll do a little bit of a demo with it and give you kind of an idea of what it might sound like in my classroom. Okay, go ahead and pause. All right, so I'm going to describe what's on the screen to my students, keeping it very simple because they don't have a lot of vocabulary. So I would mark on my board vocabulary that we're going to use. This is one of them. So hay dos animales. ¿Sí? Hay dos animales. Uno, dos. Un animal ve un animal ve un objeto. Ve un objeto. El otro animal ve el objeto también. I would probably note what the word también means on my board because it's out of bounds in the first week of school. Okay. Okay, go stop. El animal dice, so that's one of my targets, right? Un cocodrilo. ¿Eh? Un cocodrilo. ¿Es un cocodrilo? El objeto y dice que es un cocodrilo. No, no es un cocodrilo. El otro animal dice Es un tronco. Es un tronco. Es un cocodrilo. Oh, es un tronco. And that is how I would continue with that. And I would pause and point to my target structures over and over. That's going to make sure you slow down for the kids. Okay. So we have another video on the next slide. And we'll watch it. And I want you to think about what are some of those high frequency structures that you could target in this. And try to keep it minimal. 3 at the max. Okay?
How we would normally present this is kind of backwards from what we did just now. Normally, we would show just the still images first, or do play, pause, and talk about it. And then if I'm doing the still images, because I don't like the play, pause thing, I never show the ending, especially if it's a little twist. Because when they watch the video, you want them to still be engaged, and you don't want to ruin the surprise. And then once they see wildebeest, they're like, oh, I bet there's going to be another little hook, right at the end of this video. Or when we use Simon's cat, there's usually a little twist at the end. So it really helps keep their interest if you don't show the whole video from the very beginning. And then you show the whole thing at the end.
Yeah, I never show them the end of wildebeest for the first time that I do it with them. And there's 2 animals, and they keep arguing over whether this is a crocodile or it's a tree branch or whatever. And so when we finally get to watch it, they're like, oh, it's all a good way to keep them captivated.
Okay, so I think we're going to do the whole thing on this one.
Yeah, I think it's pretty short.
You guys try and jot down some what you would target if you were showing this to your kids. What high frequency structures in particular would you want? You guys seen Simon's cat? Yeah.
Okay, so why don't you take a minute or so and talk with people nearby and think about what are some structures that you could target with this video.
About taking vocabulary notes, and I said I don't usually require it, but some kids will want to. Is there anything that I should add to that?
I don't let them do anything when we're listening.
It's all about the listening, and the repetition should be the catalyst for getting it in their heads, not the recording.
Yep.
Got it.
The microphone is tracking you, so if you stray too far from the screen, it's not going to be okay.
I see. Okay, thank you. Okay, so what do we think? What are some high-frequency structures that we could probably use to movie talk this video? What do we think?
It lends itself well to verbs.
Yeah, such as?
Wants or eat.
Yep. Wants.
I've even used this one for expressing hunger. And I won't start off by saying the cat because that might give it away. I'll say the tiger, even though that's maybe not 100% accurate. Say the tiger is hungry. Is the lion hungry? No, there is no lion. There is a tiger, and the tiger is hungry. Something like that.
Good. What are some other phrases that you are going to be able to sneak in even though they're not necessarily your targets. Likes. Yep. What's the weather like there? Yeah, it's snowing. Yeah. So all of that, movie, but they're not your target. Okay. So if you're, for example, just targeting maybe these 4 phrases, okay, and over and over again because it's part of the scenery, okay? So you don't have to have any of that written down. This is all visual. You're using the video itself to provide the support for your students to scaffold comprehension. Okay, all right. All right, so what do you do after the movie talk? Well, you don't have to do anything. Don't ever feel like you should do anything, because the movie talk in and of itself is compelling, comprehensible input. But a lot of us do extend the movie talk. You can get in some reading by reading the movie talk. So you could have it written out, and here's those target phrases again. Now they're reading them, and you just doubled your repetitions. Some examples that we have linked into this that you are welcome to check out on your own time is an example with a movie talk called Ormy the Pig, and this is using Textivate. I don't know if anybody used Textivate. Yeah, awesome.
It's an awesome program. It's not a free one, unfortunately, but it is definitely worth the money. You just type in, I think it's up to 500 words, which has always been plenty for me, and it gamifies it for you. There's like literally 60, 70 different games or different ways to play some of the same games, and it's amazeballs.
Yeah, it's super easy to use and definitely worth every penny. But if you don't want to invest in something like that, you can use Quizlet. Quizlet doesn't have to be English translation, like a flashcard. It can be questions and answers. And yeah, you can. And the point is not that the point is only that they're seeing the phrases again. That's it. So this one.
Rather than doing, like she said, the direct translation, she's got sentence starters and sentence completers, and then a question and answer. Are you familiar with Quizlet Live? That's been around a while. The kids love that one. This has been a little bit harder for me to make because you have to be really careful that each sentence starter has exactly
just one
possible answer.
Yeah.
I've made it before, and the kids get mad at me like, you cost me 11 points.
But I made them read it again.
Yeah.
And that's the point.
Hopefully they've learned it. But I also don't want to purposefully, screw them out of the win of the game.
See, I, on the other hand, love unfair things, and I purposely will make things just to, because what other joys do I get? And you're like, so yeah, again, the whole point is they're just reading this again. That's it. So if they get it wrong, so be it. You read it again. I still win. So. All right. You can extend your movie talk through writing. Playing a game like Write, Draw, Pass. Have you played Write, Draw, Pass before? Okay, some of you have. Okay, never heard of it? Okay, it's pretty simple. I apologize I don't have this already linked in here, but I will make sure by the end of the day that this is linked in here for you. Basically, Write, Draw, Pass is students can choose a sentence from the story, in this case, the movie talk. So we could write, hay dos animales. And then they go through a series of partner passes. And so the next person that gets their paper is going to illustrate.
So first person writes, and then the second person is going to read what was written, and they're basically going to draw the picture that sentence illustrates, isn't the right word, but illustrates. And then before they pass it again, the person who drew the picture folds back the top of the paper. So erase the dos animales, just erase that.
And they only see the picture.
All they can see is the picture now. And so then you pass it again, and the third person's job is to caption the picture. So I might say there are 2 wildebeest, or maybe I got the exact wording, but usually it's a little bit more difficult than just that kind of simple sentence, and it gets really crazy. It's almost like the game Telephone, where you whisper secrets to one another. It's kind of like that. I'm sorry?
Illustration. This exists.
Oh.
You can buy this.
Oh, really? Oh, that's funny.
Cool.
There's a free template that you can use that I'll link here, and there's better instructions than I just gave you. So, yeah. I linked a few movie talk resources from. I linked the wildebeest for you. A couple. One I made for Ormy the pig. A couple that I've linked from some of my French friends that teach nearby me, and they were happy to share the resources put together. So, if you're tied to a textbook, you can use those video stories. We use Avancemos text series, and that's actually where I started. I'm like, okay, I can't find something that fits this vocabulary. Well, my textbook had one. So I just applied the same concept.
Videos like the one and like the bird sitting on the wire that you see before a Pixar movie. Mr. Bean is also a fabulous resource. There's almost no spoken language, so they're really flexible for anybody to use. And there's all sorts of videos published on YouTube that are essentially silent cartoons. And I love using those. They're really fun.
There's a database linked here for you. It's constantly updated. There's people adding stuff all the time. So if you're ever just not sure, peruse the database and see if there's something that fits what you need to fit in.
I'll use Movie Talk as well with feature-length films because I teach 1 through 4. And so I teach Les Intouchables, Le Petit Prince, the movie, and there's another one, Count of Monte Cristo. And so I'll just picture talk or movie talk the Hollywood movies and present those before we ever see it, so the kids know what's going on because I've narrated it for them in a more simple way. And I'll put vocabulary up there as well if it's not going to be comprehensible to them. And we spend a day on the movie talk before we ever see the movie, and then they know what's going on even if they can't pick up on all of the language in the feature movie. Do you have any questions about this before? I think the next thing is...
Yeah, I think it's going to move on. Yeah? Okay.
Cool.
All right, so the next thing is read. And it's kind of like, well, obviously, but if you are new to this, like I was at one point, you're like, okay, but it's not just reading, is it? I can't just hand them something to read and just be like, here. Because there's a lot of things that could go wrong. They might not do it. They might not understand it. So when somebody tells you, oh, you need to read more in class, what does that really mean? So how do you make a text comprehensible? Well, these are 3 things that have really helped me be able to do that. So you're going to utilize some of your pre-reading strategies. And these are just across the board. These aren't language specific. These are ways to help kids read better. So it doesn't matter if it's Spanish class, French class, science class, math class, whatever. Next, build their vocabulary. Skim and scan for main idea, supporting details, etc. Look for cognates. What do you think the title is? Look at the title. What's this article going to be about? Okay. Check comprehension. Structures and making sure that you note any vocabulary that's out of bounds. Use, for example, embedded readings, use visuals, gestures, editing, and simplifying. Those are all ways you you can scaffold your text. One of the things that you can read are stories, cultural narratives, novels. You can read news. There are lots of things available. As a Spanish teacher, I feel like there's tons and tons of resources available. I know Karen doesn't always quite feel like that, being a French teacher.
I write a lot of my own stuff. You know, like the little cultural blurb that's in your textbook that's always in English and it doesn't really go into enough detail. I'll take that and not just translate it, but expand on it, put it into the target language, make it as comprehensible as I can. And so instead of getting 2 sentences about, I don't know, restaurant culture, we have more of an interesting dialogue on that than what like the little blurb in the textbook would be. And it's target language. It doesn't have to be in English to make it comprehensible.
Yeah.
Good?
Yep.
And with news sites too, look for children's news sites. There's one in French that maybe you've heard of, Un jour en actualité, and it's a fabulous children's news site. It's for I think 8 to 13 or 14-year-olds, so it's geared at language acquirers.
Write that on the board.
What?
Write that on the board.
Yeah.
So one of those pre-reading strategies and scaffolding strategies that you can use is what's called an embedded reading. And I've linked to the embedded reading website. Okay. This was created by Lori Clark, who, if you've never seen her speak, she's amazing. She was the keynote here last year, and she's so good. So basically the idea behind an embedded reading is that you take a text. It could be something that you've created, or it could be an authentic resource. It could be anything, but in its original form may not be completely understandable to your learners. Okay, so what we do is we create simplified versions of the reading or of the resource, and we take it down to its most basic level. Okay, for example, this is a simplified reading that I use to get my students ready for a longer reading for Puedo Ir al Baño by Señor Woolley, which stories, it's very early in the school year, and so even as simple as the Señor Woolley video is, it's still not completely accessible to my students. So in order to make, I create that are more simplified. So anything that you see here in my story that's underlined, that is one of our target phrases that we are focusing on. You can see, for example, that I used different forms of to need. So I used he or she needs. I used I need. I consider that one. It's just showing them different forms of it. I taught this phrase, puedo ir al baño, as a phrase itself. So I'm not teaching them puedo by itself or ir al baño or ir by itself. I'm teaching the whole phrase, puedo ir al baño. So we read this. We worked with the text. And once I was sure that we understood the first version, I was able to go on to versions that had more details and eventually prep them for the longest version of the reading, which wasn't really very long in the end. But again, remember, they've only been in class for a few weeks. So, go ahead. Other story options. Revista Literal is a website that offers free stories that are written by students. It's run by Martina Bex. I am a Martina Bex fan, so you will hear me reference her a lot. But it's really awesome because it's totally free and you can access it. You can print things off. You can keep them for your libraries. Or you can go paperless and keep it online and the kids can access it. It's totally free. You can also submit your stories to it to participate in it. The French experiment has good stories. There's also a Spanish experiment and a German experiment. It's not all completely free, but they do have some resources that are free, and it might be a great starting point.
I found some sources on like parenting websites, like stories that they might tell their children, and those are usually really, really good resources as well. They're pretty qualified, and if not, I take their story, simplify it, or take it out of the simple past and put it into the present tense, or whatever I need to do to make it comprehensible to them. So parenting websites, target language can also be a really, really good place to get resources. Children's songs, I do a lot of music in class, or good resources for that.
Another thing that you can read are your scripts from your movie talks. This is a that I'm tied to a textbook, so I have to teach direct object pronouns, and so this was one that I could give some context, and I was targeting the phrase lo ve and no puede controlarlo. Movie talk with Selena's song, Bitty Bitty Bom Bom, and the video itself is not super friendly for a movie talk, but it was enough. I could get a little mini story out of it. This is basically the story. And I got in lots of reps of my target phrases, lo ve and no puede controlarlo. So after we were done listening to it, we could read it. I've linked it there for you. You can have all the stuff that I made for it. There's lots of activities that I did to extend it to, so feel free to copy, make your own. Yes. Cultural narratives. Karen mentioned earlier some of the little cultural bits from your textbook. That's actually the first thing that I did when I started diving into comprehensible input, is I went through my textbook and I'm like, okay, what can I comprehensify? And so this was one of the things that came up at some point in one of my textbooks, and I wrote it to use and talk about a cultural element as I was talking about Dia de los Muertos with my students. It was an easy way to also bring in cross-curricular, because we're talking about science and insect migration and all those great things. So I use this in level 2, so you might notice that there's not a whole lot footnoted, but definitely anything that I thought was still out of bounds for them, I footnoted. And the great thing is that when you create things yourself, you can always change what's footnoted. So if you have a group that you think can handle certain things, you can unfootnote it and just let it be. Here's another one I wrote about mole, because Karen mentioned that you can use movie talk for full-length movies. I do use one in my level 2 called Canela. It's been a lot of fun. I've really enjoyed doing it the last several years. And one of the pieces that is part of the movie is mole. And so most of my kids in Lawrence, Kansas don't know what mole is. And so about what it is and talk about the ingredients, and now I've got in my food vocabulary that I'm supposed to do in the capítulo preliminar. Formats. Two of them today. Take home with you. They're relatively expensive. You can even find them on Teachers Pay Teachers. This is a funny little story from Senor Jordan. You may know grammar, but he's into TVRS, and he lots of stories. And this is actually a video series that he created, and I used it last year to introduce the Super 7 and the Sweet 16 to my kids. And it just happened that he took the story and made it into a little comic book. And so I bought it. It was $3.99, and it specifically says, make as many copies as you want. So I sent it to my district print office, and I had it bound. And I have present tense versions, and I have a past tense version, and it was awesome.
Some of the companies, Fluency Matters in particular, they're starting to put their novels into two tenses, like the present tense and the past tense. And I never dreamed that this was possible, but this year I taught my level 2 class the preterite and the imperfect, or the passé composé and the imparfait, at the same time with no direct instruction. They had next to no direct instruction on those two tenses, but we picked it up like just through the reading, and it was amazing to see their eventual output. I mean, it was a long process. It didn't happen overnight or anything, but just because they made that little change in the book, I only had to buy it once instead of having to buy it in 2 different tenses or whatever. I mean, it was really, really amazing to be able to use novels and still get the grammar that you're supposed to get across to them.
And I will say, too, if you decide to read novels, to please invest in the teacher's guides. They have been so helpful to help me figure out how this actually looks and works in my class. Because I don't know about you, but I hear all these things, but I need to see how it works before I can think about doing it. And I need to know the logistics. And so you told me, okay, read a novel. But what do I do with it? You know, I have no idea. Like, do we just read? You know, and over the years I've learned, oh, okay, it's more than just the reading, you know, but when you're first starting out, and even now, I still consider myself a learner in this, it's like, what do I do? And those teacher's guides, they have really invested in a lot of them, especially if you buy from Fluency Matters, so they are worth every penny.
You get games that you can transfer to lots of other aspects in your oh, wow, I don't remember which one it was, but I was like, this is a fabulous idea. And I did it in like all 4 levels within a week of learning the game. And it had nothing to do with the novel in 3 of my 4 classes.
News, Karen mentioned a French option. I could not find an apologize. I have any amazing in here. But it's a really great resource for Spanish, or if you're ESL, because it actually is an authentic resource. It's Spanish on it. So it's probably not particularly accessible to your novice lows and your very early kids, but I use it quite often in my level 2 class, and even if I adjust it down to the lowest Lexile score, it's accessible to the kids, at least some of it. How do you extend the text? Basically, you're just trying to get the kids to read more. So one of those things is, you want to hand out is do a cooperative mural. That's easy, no prep. I've made sure I linked instructions here. Using Quizlet again for questions and answers. Or you can play 9 squares. So we're going to do a quick round of 9 square. And so Karen is handing out to you the Goldilocks and the 3 Bears story in English. And I actually used my Textivate subscription and put the story in there and let Textify do its thing. And then I actually clicked print because you can make worksheets from it. Don't be scared of the word worksheet. But you can make a worksheet like I did here. Sorry, my puppy dog walked on this, so I apologize for the paw print. She didn't pay attention to those who were in my seat. So to play 9 square, you basically take a story and you divide it up into 9 sections. So you can see here that I have it sorted. And what you're going to do is you're going to just cut it. You can just tear it. Go ahead and do that. You can like fold and then tear. It doesn't have to be pretty. If you don't have one, then definitely get near somebody that does, and you can kind of see how we're going to play this. So you might have noticed that the story is out of order. So as you're done, go ahead and work with your partner or partners to put the story in the correct order.
This particular game, you can have it break the boxes by word count, so they're all you can have it break by sentence, so kind of whatever your preference is.
Yeah, well, we're not going to have to add anything.
No.
We still have PQA, right?
Yeah, but I'm okay with going a little bit fast because I'm like, the next presentation right after us is about PQA.
Okay. Are we in here next hour too?
I'm staying in here.
I was going to say down with forced speech because that's what we're crashing.
Okay.
And Ray's numbers, Jim's was really good, but it was story asking and card talk, so you didn't miss anything.
Okay.
You would have been bored. I mean, it was a good presentation.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so just in the interest of time, what I would have asked my students to do, in this case you would have cut it apart and then put the story in order. So I just made you read the story a whole lot of times, right? Which is the whole point. And then you can play different variations of 9 squares. So what I would have my students do is turn over one piece of the story, any of the 9 pieces, just physically turn it over so that it's not visible. And then I count to 5 and they have to walk around the room and find another desk. And then they have to read the story and figure out what the missing part is. And then they can check it by turning it over. So you can do that several times. Then I also have them pair up and we'll do that again and I'll make them retell the missing part. So you're doing some supported output. There's tons of variations on this. I use it a lot.
I like having them, after it's all hopefully perfectly in order, 2 or 3 pieces. You don't want to really do any more than that. And then you go to another table and you have to identify the ones that are out of order and put them back into the correct order.
Yeah. So how do you get them to read it, 25 times before the end of the hour? Well, that's it. So, all right. Just have a few. So, last piece here, we'll asking a question. So, one of the activities that is super easy to use is card talk. It used to be called circling with balls, and I've linked it here with you. And basically, just you give your you ask your in the target language about drawings. It's really that simple. I was like, it can't be that easy. It is, really. And then there are lots of things that you can do with it. Here's some sample questions that you could use with Card Talk. So you could ask, what does he or she like to do? So tell your students, draw an activity that you like to do. And so you're circling the word he or she likes. You want to get in some sports vocabulary, but really know what the kids are actually involved in and not have it just be random. This is a great way to do that. What book does he or she like to read? You can use it to talk about what you did last weekend or what you did over the summer. This is actually how I start off my level 2. Draw something that was awesome last summer and draw something that was not awesome last summer. And you can milk that for quite a few days talking about it, and you're getting in all of these past tense reps, and you're starting to teach the preterite, in this case for Spanish. You're starting to teach that without saying, we're going to talk about the past tense. So, we don't quite have time to try, so we're not going to do that, but I do encourage you to check out some of the videos. I'll see if I can find one and link it in here, and please watch other people doing it. That was helpful to me because I'm like, well, how long do I do it? And, do I talk to 3 kids? Do I talk to 1 kid? Do I talk to every kid? So those are things that helped me in just reading and watching other people's experiences with it.
If you were in Jim Tripp's session in the last hour, this is kind of how he started with the football. Usually a kid is going to draw on their card, well, I like football or I like baseball, basketball. And you just start from there. Do you play football here, or do you play football in the community? And do you play football with Tom, or do you play football with Susie? And just asking them more and more simple, usually yes or no questions, especially if they're early learners.
Mm-hmm. You can do a lot of things with your card talk. I made this into a listening assessment. Their drawings, and I said a statement about it, and they had to choose which one I was talking about. My kids, easy to do. We do it on Mondays. We have a quick question about what people did. Always make sure that you provide support at the beginning. I loved a lot of people were studied or whatever, and then the kids underneath it, and you use that to start your conversation like, oh, wow. So I would say, I see that 7 people watched Netflix. Karen, what did you watch on Netflix? And then my kids were like, we watched Grey's Anatomy. And I'm like, you watched Grey's Anatomy? And then I'm like, did anybody else watch Grey's Anatomy? And there's always my girls. Yeah, I watched Grey's Anatomy. I'm like, did you watch it together? And so you can just start a good conversation that way.
I like to change this up seasonally too, and adding in ones like I put in, did you go to the pumpkin patch? When it was October, you're never going to see that again, but it's kind of a fun way to bring in some extra vocabulary that maybe you wouldn't be able to incorporate otherwise.
And if you click on that picture in my slideshow, it'll take you to somebody talking about doing that. So. Special person interviews, and considering that the presentation right after this is Bryce Headstrom doing special person interviews, I'm not even going to kid you guys with my little bit of knowledge of it. But it is a lot of fun. It doesn't have to last the entire class. Again, I like logistics. I need to know how this is going to look in my classroom. Do as little or as much as you want, and as your class maintains interest in it. And there's tons of resources available. Bryce has tons of free questions that he uses in his special person interviews online. I'll link that here too. These are other ones. Some are free, some are not. But, there are tons of things available to you that are already made to help you get going. And we were going to practice. Sorry.
These are just questions that we would ask. I kind of do them as warm-up type stuff.
Mm-hmm. And then to wrap up your questioning, you can extend the conversation. I like to take all the information that I've gathered about my kids and make it into a game like Kahoot or Grudge Ball or the Unfair Game. I also recently started doing Write and Discuss, which has been talked about a lot on Twitter recently. And it's as easy as it sounds. You're going to just ask the kids to recall information that they remember from what you guys did that day, and you're going to write it on the board, and you're just going to talk about it. And so you're actually almost redoing that, what you just did, in an abbreviated version, but you're getting in more reps. So I've for you too, and that's it. That's all we have time for. Yeah, are there any questions?
Thank you. So helpful.
You're welcome. Oh, I'm glad.
Chat, please. Even if you have a question, you might want to go back and read some of the questions that we did answer. I find those helpful too. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.